Tavranesh had removed 37 sealed conflict records from the archival carrier before she realized one column was empty. She stopped with the 38th case halfway out of its slot. The Sable Registry did not contain mysteries. It contained explanations. Every recognized interstellar conflict for the previous 6 centuries had been reduced to numbers, dates, fleet movements, territorial changes, casualties, causes, settlements, and consequences. The Registry Bureau existed because governments lied, commanders exaggerated, witnesses remembered badly, and history became useless if nobody bothered to preserve the inconvenient parts. Tavra liked inconvenient parts. They were usually where the truth lived. She placed the record case on the illuminated table and expanded the comparative conflict ledger again. 43 recognized starfaring civilizations. 173 standard years of human interstellar settlement. Territorial disputes, 11. Commercial confrontations involving armed vessels, 26. Pirate incursions near human-controlled routes, 9. Foreign military mobilizations toward human systems, 6. Completed major attacks against a permanent human settlement. 0. Tavra narrowed her 4 eyes. She adjusted the filters. Nothing changed. She removed the word major. 0. She included failed occupations. 0. She widened the definition to include bombardment resulting in structural damage to an inhabited colony. 0. That was impossible. Not statistically improbable. Impossible. Humanity was neither the richest civilization in settled space nor the oldest. It did not possess the largest navy. Its territory was scattered across a loose chain of systems rather than protected behind a compact border. Humans traded heavily, argued frequently, ignored several conventions other species considered obvious, and possessed a talent for settling on worlds that larger governments had previously dismissed as inconvenient. They should have made enemies. According to the registry, they had. Those enemies simply never attacked. Tavra called up the 6 recorded military mobilizations. In every case, the pattern was similar. A disagreement worsened. Ships moved. Political language hardened. Human defensive forces prepared. And then, nothing. One expedition returned home after what its government called a navigational reassessment. Another halted because of an unexplained change in strategic conditions. A third was officially reassigned to domestic security. The remaining records used phrases so vague Tavra suspected they had been written specifically to prevent future historians from understanding them. She leaned back. Where is the missing war? The archival room did not answer. Its walls continued humming softly around her. Tavra sent a query to strategic archives, then another to military registry databases, then 3 requests for sealed diplomatic records. By the time she left Sable Registry 12 hours later, she had discovered only one useful fact. Nobody else could explain it either. For almost 2 centuries, analysts had noticed humanity's strange record. Each generation produced theories. Humans had secret alliances. Humans bribed aggressors. Humans possessed unknown weapons. Humans had somehow manipulated public records. Humans had simply been lucky. None of the theories survived careful examination. Tavra went home annoyed. The next morning, the Marinic Directorate announced that it intended to solve the problem for her. The Directorate's declaration concerned Kestrel Reach. Officially, the dispute was about administration rights. Kestrel Reach had been settled by humans 58 years earlier, after both humanity and the Directorate claimed an old navigation charter granted them access to the system. For decades, the The disagreement remained precisely what most interstellar territorial disagreements became when neither side considered the prize worth a war. A legal nuisance. Then the Directorate changed governments. The new administration promised to recover what it called Morenic strategic dignity. Kestrel Reach was selected as the demonstration. Tavra read the announcement at her desk inside Sable Registry. The Directorate demanded human withdrawal within 9 days. Humanity refused. The Directorate mobilized 14 military vessels. Tavra stared at the deployment report. Then she smiled. Not because she wanted a war. Because finally, history had presented a controlled test. Kestrel Reach was almost absurdly suitable. Human population, 218,000. Primary activities: agricultural chemistry, atmospheric engineering, archival storage, and light manufacturing. Permanent military vessels, 4. Heavy orbital defenses, limited. Nearest major human fleet concentration, too distant to arrive before the Directorate. No alliance treaty required any other civilization to intervene. If generations of analysts were correct, and humanity's survival depended on a hidden military capability, Kestrel Reach would reveal it. Tavra requested field observer status. The Bureau approved it within an hour. Apparently, she was not the only person curious. 2 days later, she arrived at Kestrel Reach aboard a registry courier. The first thing she noticed was how ordinary the system looked. No enormous defensive platforms. No concealed warships revealed by close-range scans. No suspicious power signatures. No encrypted military traffic beyond what 4 defensive vessels would normally generate. The human colony occupied a broad green and brown continent beneath streaks of silver cloud. Cargo ships crossed between orbital stations. Agricultural transports moved along established lanes. Weather control satellites adjusted storm patterns above the Western Ocean. Nothing behaved like a fortress. Tavra spent her first 6 hours waiting for the trick. None appeared. Her assigned human liaison met her at the civilian landing terminal. Iris Calder was shorter than Tavra expected and wore a dark utility jacket with an identification strip across one shoulder. No uniform. No visible weapon. No diplomatic ornaments. Conflict Auditor Nesh. Yes. Iris Calder, Continuance Administration. Tavra glanced at her identification. You aren't military. No. I requested access to defensive preparations. I know. Then why were you assigned to me? Because the Defense Authority said most of your questions would eventually become my problem. That was irritatingly vague. Tavra followed her through the terminal. Kestrel Reach did not look frightened. Workers repaired a freight loader near the landing apron. 2 children argued beside an automated drink dispenser. A group of university students occupied half the public transport platform, complaining loudly about examination schedules, while 14 hostile warships approached their system. Does the population understand the situation? Tavra asked. Yes. They appear remarkably calm. Iris considered that. Most people are still going to have jobs tomorrow. If the Directorate attacks, some of them may not. That's why the evacuation sectors are open. Tavra stopped. Evacuation. Coastal districts and the orbital industrial ring, the likely engagement corridors. There it was. Something practical. Something military. Tavra resumed walking. How many hidden defense installations are in this system? Iris looked at her. Hidden from whom? From external observers. None that I know about. Unknown military vessels. No. Experimental weapons. You'll have to ask defense. I did. And they said no. Then I'd probably believe them. Tavra disliked humans already. Not because they were threatening. Because they refused to act mysterious while being mysterious. They boarded a ground transport. The vehicle carried them away from the terminal, across flat agricultural country broken by rows of blue-leafed crops. In the distance stood a low complex built into a ridge. There were no turrets, no hardened launch structures, no defensive towers, only broad doors, climate control units, and cargo rails descending underground. Continuance House 7, Iris said. Tavra checked her data. The facility appeared in public records. Civilian Archival Repository. Foreign Cultural Holdings. Long-term biological storage. Historical preservation. You work there. I supervise foreign custody. And this matters to the military situation because. Iris looked through the window. The Directorate intends to operate weapons near property we hold for other governments. Tavra waited. Iris said nothing else. You believe they're concerned about damaging archival material. I don't know what they believe. You expect an invasion fleet to withdraw because you filed a preservation notice. No. Then what exactly are you doing? My job. Tavra stared at her. The transport continued toward the ridge. Marshal Ravin Kesh arrived in system 31 hours later. Tavra watched his ships appear on the strategic display inside Kestrel Reach's Civilian Emergency Coordination Center. 14 Marenic vessels, 2 heavy command cruisers, 8 line ships, 4 escorts, more than enough to overwhelm the permanent human naval force. The human ships did not charge forward. They established positions near the inhabited planet and transmitted the standard territorial warning. Kesh continued inward. Tavra watched human officers around the room. Nobody appeared surprised. That bothered her. She turned toward Iris. What happens now? We finished notifications. Notifications to whom? Owners. Of the archives. Yes. You're doing that now. We started when the Directorate confirmed military movement. Tavra's patience failed. Why? Iris finally seemed to realize that the answer was not obvious. Because some of the holdings have specific conflict clauses. Conflict clauses. If a custody site enters a potential combat zone, the legal owner receives verification access and an updated preservation risk assessment. Tavra almost laughed. 14 Marenic warships were entering the system, and the humans were sending archival status reports. Her terminal chimed. A Bureau priority notice had arrived. Tavra opened it, then stopped. The notice was not from the registry. It was a forwarded diplomatic inquiry from the Lethari Cultural Continuity Office. They requested confirmation that Kestrel Reach's Continuance House 7 was inside the projected combat region. Another message appeared. The Arid Cooperative. Then the Vasca Remnant Authority. Then the Selûne Crown Archive. Tavra looked at Iris. How many foreign governments store material here? 23. 23. Government-level depositors. More if you include universities and cultural institutions. What exactly are they storing? Depends on the depositor. Tavra's terminal chimed again. And again. She opened a facility ownership index. 23 symbols appeared. They represented civilizations that had almost nothing in common. Some were allies. Several disliked each other. 2 had not maintained formal diplomatic relations in 70 years. Yet all 23 possessed sealed holdings beneath Kestrel Reach. Why here? Tavra asked. Stable geology, good climate systems, low political risk, our preservation standards are reliable. That cannot be the entire reason. Iris shrugged. It's a large part. The Morenic ships continued inward. Human defenders moved to shadow them. Still no secret fleet appeared. Still no hidden weapons activated. Tavra began feeling something she rarely experienced during an investigation. She had expected an answer. Instead, the mystery was becoming worse. The first foreign representative arrived 6 hours later. Not a warship. A diplomatic courier. It carried 3 Lethari preservation specialists who demanded immediate access to their holdings. Humanity granted it. Then came an arid vessel. Then a private Selûne archival transport. By the end of the day, the orbital traffic around Kestrel Reach contained more foreign civilian ships than human military vessels. Tavra studied the incoming requests. None promised military support. None even mentioned defending humanity. They all asked variations of the same questions. Were their deposits secure? What was the projected orbital strike radius? Would Continuance House 7 survive a direct surface attack? Could priority items be moved deeper? Could remote verification be maintained if communications failed? Humans answered each question. The Directorate kept advancing. Tavra requested access to sealed historical mobilization records. This time, she knew what she was looking for. The Bureau found the first correlation. 141 years earlier, the Tsaran Combine had prepared an expedition against a human colony after a mining dispute. The expedition stopped. At the time, analysts found no explanation. Tavra opened human custody records from the same period. 3 years before the crisis, humanity had helped evacuate the last complete Tsaran genomic collection after a laboratory moon suffered catastrophic orbital decay. The collection had been placed in human preservation. Tavra found another case. The Aroth succession conflict. A human system had nearly been targeted after sheltering political refugees. The attacking fleet turned away before reaching weapons range. 4 Aroth historical temples had previously transferred original pre-unification manuscripts into human custody during a civil war. Another case. Another deposit. Another canceled attack. Tavra leaned over the records until the light from her workstation hurt her eyes. It was not an alliance. That was why everyone had missed it. There was no treaty to search for. No mutual defense clause. No common government. No promise that attacking humanity meant fighting anyone else. There was simply property, memory, inheritance, things civilizations had decided they could not afford to lose. And somehow, over generations, enormous amounts of those things had ended up with humans. Tavra called Iris. I need to see Continuance House 7. You already saw the exterior. Inside. There was a pause. Some sections are restricted. I have registry authorization. That doesn't override ownership privacy. I need whatever you can legally show me. Another pause. All right. The repository extended nearly 2 kilometers beneath the ridge. Tavra had expected shelves. She found a city built for memory. Climate vaults. Vacuum preservation chambers. Biological storage. Magnetic archives. Physical objects protected inside inert atmospheres. Data cores isolated from public networks. Entire rooms maintained at atmospheric conditions that would kill a human within minutes, because the species that created the stored materials had evolved under different chemistry. Workers moved quietly along marked corridors. Most were human. Some were not. This is only one facility, Tavra asked. One of the larger ones. How many exist? Human-operated. Yes. Iris thought. Depends what you count as continuance facilities. Give me a useful answer. Hundreds. Tavra stopped walking. Iris continued several steps before realizing. Hundreds. Some are small. Across human territory. And a few outside it. Why? Iris frowned slightly. Because people asked us to preserve things. That is not an explanation. It is from our side. Tavra caught up. They passed a transparent barrier, beyond which a long metallic sculpture floated in low gravity. The identification panel bore a civilization seal Tavra recognized. Selun. The original. I thought the original was destroyed during the Second Palace collapse. The public one was. Why do humans have it? The royal archivist moved several originals off-world 19 years before the collapse. And trusted humanity with them. Yes. Why? Iris gave the same answer. Because they asked us to keep them safe. Tavra stopped asking. For the first time, she understood why Iris's answers felt incomplete. The human genuinely did not see anything extraordinary about them. A government arrived with something precious. Humans agreed to protect it. Then they did. That was the entire mechanism from the human perspective. The strategic consequences had accumulated around them unnoticed. Perhaps even by humanity. They entered a lower vault. 23 ownership seals glowed on a wall display. One belonged to the Marenic Directorate. Tavra stared at it. What do you have of theirs? I can't disclose restricted inventory. They're preparing to attack this facility. They still own their deposit. They might destroy it. That doesn't change the custody agreement. Tavra slowly turned toward her. You are maintaining confidentiality for the government threatening you. Of course. You could publicly announce what they stored here. Why? It might embarrass them into withdrawing. Iris's expression changed. Not anger. Something firmer. They gave it to us because they trusted us with it. They may bombard you. Then we'll protect it during the bombardment. Tavra had no answer. Marshal Kesh entered the outer defensive envelope the following morning. Humanity transmitted another warning. This one contained no threat. It stated that Marenic military operations could create unacceptable risk to foreign custodial holdings, and that authenticated owners had been notified. Kesh replied within minutes. The Directorate considered human archival activities irrelevant to the territorial dispute. His fleet continued. At the Sable Registry, Tavra's colleagues began sending her increasingly urgent messages. Had she found the missing weapon? Was there a classified alliance? Was a foreign fleet moving? Tavra answered no to all three. Then she wrote, I believe we have misunderstood the category of deterrence. She did not send the message. Not yet. She needed proof. The Directorate crossed another boundary. Human warships withdrew closer to the planet. Kesh's vessels deployed into coercive formation. No one fired. Foreign governments continued communicating. A Lethari Preservation Office requested emergency relocation authority for 3 objects. Humans approved it. The Selon demanded independent verification teams. Approved. The Arid Cooperative wanted redundant transmission of biological integrity data. Approved. Tavra watched the requests pile up. Each government acted as if humanity were a storage provider facing a natural disaster. Then the first political message arrived. The Vasca Remnant Authority formally advised the Directorate that any operation capable of damaging its deposited historical records would constitute an unacceptable act against Vasca cultural property. Not humanity. Vasca property. An hour later, the Selûne Crown issued a similar notice. Then the Arid. The Directorate replied that it had no intention of targeting foreign holdings. The obvious question followed immediately. How did Kesh intend to guarantee that? He did not answer. The Human Defense Command still said almost nothing. Tavra found that more powerful than any threat. Humanity did not need to recruit the depositors. The depositors were recruiting themselves. The Directorate reached weapons range 19 hours later. Tavra stood in the observation gallery of Kestrel Reach's Emergency Coordination Center. The tactical display showed 14 Marenic vessels arranged above the orbital plane. 4 human defense ships remained between them and the planet. The numbers looked ridiculous. Kesh transmitted his final demand. Human administrative withdrawal. Transfer of orbital control. Recognition of Directorate sovereignty. Humanity rejected it. The Marenic flagship began charging its forward batteries. Alarm sounded. Nobody in the room panicked. Tavra looked toward Iris. The human was reading a preservation status report. How can you possibly be doing that now? Doing what? Working. We have 23 depositors requesting updates. There may be an orbital battle in minutes. Yes. Iris's terminal flashed. She read the message. Then her face tightened for the first time since Tavra had met her. What? We've completed emergency verification on the Marenic collection. Tavra stared. Now. They requested automatic conflict verification when the original deposit was created. The Directorate requested that. The previous government. Iris opened another display. I need to send this to their current archival authority. Tavra moved closer. For 1 second, the document was visible. She saw an image. A thin sheet of dark material covered in faint silver markings. Nothing about it looked important. What is that? Iris hesitated. Then checked the authorization line. Disclosure has been released to the Marenic Cultural Ministry. To them, not me. Correct. Tavra almost protested. Then her own terminal chimed. A registry historical reference update appeared. The Directorate's Cultural Ministry had just changed the classification status of a preserved object at Kestrel Reach. The file opened. Tavra read it. Then read it again. The object was a star chart. Not a military chart. Not a navigation system. A physical astronomical map created before the Marenic species had developed orbital flight. Their ancestors had mapped the night sky by hand and marked the movements of planets with mineral pigment. Only 3 such charts had survived into the modern age. 2 were destroyed when tectonic collapse swallowed the old Marenic capital. The 3rd had been sent off-world during an archaeological exchange. Human conservators had restored it, then preserved it. For 82 years. It was the oldest intact map showing the universe as the Marenic people had understood it before they ever left their world. Tavra looked toward the tactical display. The Marenic flagship's weapons were still charging. Then she looked back at Iris. What are you doing with it? Moving the collection to the deep vault. You could send Kesh the image. The Cultural Ministry has access. You could make sure his entire fleet sees it. That isn't our decision. Why not? Because it belongs to them. Outside, the Marinic ships prepared to attack humans. Below ground, human custodians were moving Marinic history farther from danger. Tavra felt something inside her investigation shift. This was the answer. Not all of it, but the part that mattered. The humans were not protected because the galaxy feared what they might do when threatened. They were protected because, even when threatened, humans were still doing what others had trusted them to do. The Marinic flagship stopped charging its weapons. Tavra saw the power curve fall. One line ship followed. Then another. The formation remained in place. No withdrawal order came. But no one fired. Communications traffic exploded. The Directorate's Cultural Ministry contacted its fleet command. Then 3 Marinic universities. Then the foundation of First Memory, an institution older than the current government. Then provincial authorities. The messages were encrypted, but their existence was visible. Foreign governments added their own pressure. 23 civilizations did not suddenly become allies of humanity. That would have been simple. They remained themselves. They argued. They issued different demands. Some threatened trade consequences. Others demanded neutral inspection teams. One offered emergency transport. Another warned that destruction of its holdings would permanently alter diplomatic relations with the Directorate. Every message was different. Every message meant the same thing. Do not gamble with what we left there. Kesh requested a direct channel with Continuance House 7. Iris accepted from a small communication station beneath the ridge. Tavra stood nearby as observer. The Marshal appeared on the screen. He was broad even by Marinic standards, with a heavy ceremonial collar and dark scales crossing the sides of his face. His expression was controlled. Administrator Calder. Marshal, I require confirmation regarding Marinic property at your facility. You have authenticated access through your cultural ministry. I am requesting confirmation from you. Iris checked her screen. Your conflict verification protocol has been completed. All registered Marinic holdings remain intact. Have they been moved? Priority holdings are being transferred to deep preservation, including Item M. Iris looked at the authorization. Yes. Kesh was silent. Tavra realized he knew exactly what M was. How deep? I can't provide structural details during an active military confrontation. Reasonable. The word seemed to hurt him. He looked away briefly. Would human forces damage the repository rather than surrender it? No. Kesh looked back. You would permit seizure. I didn't say that. What would you do? Protect the holdings. Even ours. Yes. Why? Iris blinked. For the first time, she looked confused by the question. Because they're yours. Kesh said nothing. Iris continued. You deposited them under full retained ownership. Political relations don't alter the agreement. The Marshal's eyes narrowed slightly. My government may order me to fire on your world. I know. And you will still protect our archive. Yes. There was another long silence. Then Kesh asked, how many civilizations maintain holdings there? Iris did not answer immediately. Your command authority has already received the public ownership register. I am asking you. 23 government-level depositors. Kesh closed his eyes. Only briefly. When he opened them, Tavra saw it. Not fear. Calculation. The same calculation every unexplained expedition commander had eventually made. A battle near Kestrel Reach would not be a private war between the Directorate and humanity. Every missed shot had an owner. Every damaged vault had a history attached to it. Every destroyed object could create a new enemy that had never intended to participate. A human military victory might cost the Directorate ships. A Morenic military victory could cost it something far worse. Trust with civilizations that did not care who owned Kestrel Reach, but cared very much whether their dead languages, ancestral records, genetic archives, and irreplaceable originals survived the argument. Kesh looked at Iris. Why did your government build these repositories? It didn't. Tavra saw his expression change. Iris continued. Some are government-funded now. Most started as university or museum partnerships. Continuance House 7 expanded because more institutions requested space. So this was not created as a defensive mechanism. No. Was its strategic effect anticipated? I wouldn't know. Kesh almost laughed. It was a tired sound. Of course you wouldn't. The channel closed. 9 minutes later, the Morenic Directorate suspended offensive authorization. 32 minutes later, Kesh ordered his formation to withdraw beyond weapons range. No human vessel pursued. Tavra stood in the coordination center and watched 14 Morenic ships turn away. Nobody cheered. That surprised her. She had seen species celebrate smaller victories with parades. A human defense officer simply updated the strategic display and ordered the local alert level reduced. Iris returned to her preservation reports. Tavra followed her out. You knew this would happen. No. Humans have gone 173 years without a serious attack reaching one of your settlements. Yes. You have hundreds of repositories. Approximately. You must understand the connection. Iris stopped in the corridor. I understand it now. Tavra studied her. You truly did not build this deliberately. No. That seems impossible. Why? Because it is an extraordinary strategic advantage. Iris leaned against the wall. Tavra, Continuance House 7 stores things that survived wars, planetary disasters, political collapses, evacuations, climate failures, and accidents. Some of those objects exist because somebody carried them while leaving everything else behind. Her voice remained quiet. If a species gives you something after that, you don't turn it into leverage. Tavra thought of the Morenic chart. You could. Yes. You would become almost impossible to attack. Maybe. And you still refuse. Iris looked genuinely uncomfortable now. If the price of protecting the archive is that everyone has to wonder whether we'll threaten to destroy it, then we're not protecting it. Tavra said nothing. That was the piece every strategic model had missed. The deterrence existed only because humanity would not deliberately use it. The moment humans converted custody into hostage-taking, the whole network of trust would collapse. Their restraint was not separate from their strength. It was the thing that made the strength possible. The Directorate formally abandoned its immediate seizure attempt the next day. The territorial dispute did not disappear. Diplomats would argue about Kestrel Reach for years. That was normal. What changed was Tavra's investigation. She returned to Sable Registry with 42 terabytes of documentation and one very short conclusion. Her supervisors gathered in the historical analysis chamber. You found the deterrent, Director Vey asked. Yes. A classified human defense arrangement. No. Military technology. No. Secret alliance. No. The director's facial frills tightened. Then why does no one attack them? Tavra activated the central display. She showed the 6 unexplained historical mobilizations. Beside each, she placed the relevant custodial relationships. Tsaran Genomic Collection, Aroth Manuscripts, Kolvari Extinction Archives, Naren Dynastic Records. Then Kestrel Reach. 23 ownership seals appeared around the human system. The question assumes that a human settlement is only human, Tavra said. The room became quiet. Strategically, that is often false. She explained the pattern. Not one agreement guaranteed military intervention. Many depositors would never fight for humanity. Some actively disliked humans. That did not matter. A conflict near human custodial sites created uncontrolled consequences because the property at risk belonged to governments, institutions, cultures, and populations outside the conflict. The Bureau's senior military analyst stared at the display. So humanity accidentally created a distributed deterrence network. Tavra shook her head. No. Your evidence appears to show exactly that. It created a trust network. That is semantics. No. Tavra enlarged the Marinic record. The distinction is the entire reason it works. She explained what had happened during the crisis. Human administrators had never threatened the Marinic collection. They had preserved its confidentiality. They maintained Marinic ownership. When the Directorate prepared to attack, humans moved Marinic artifacts into deeper protection beside everyone else's. The military analyst was silent. Tavra continued. If humanity treated these holdings as strategic assets, owners would remove them. If humans threatened to destroy them, the system would end within a generation. Director Vey studied the ownership map. So nobody attacks humans because everyone has something stored with them. Not everyone, not always. And that explanation is still too simple. What is the better one? Tavra thought before answering. Enough civilizations have trusted humans with things. They cannot replace that a war in human territory rarely stays politically isolated. Director Vey looked again at the display. That still sounds like deterrence. It is. But not one humanity can activate. Correct. Then who controls it? Tavra remembered the messages arriving at Kestrel Reach. 23 governments. 23 separate motives. 23 separate voices. Nobody. That answer disturbed the room more than any secret weapon could have. 3 weeks later, Tavra returned to Kestrel Reach. The system looked exactly as it had before the crisis. Cargo traffic. Weather satellites. 4 human defense vessels. No hidden armada. No new fortifications. The Marinic ships were gone. Continuance House 7 had reopened normal intake operations. Iris met Tavra beside the main receiving bay. You came back. I needed to verify something. What? That nothing changed. Iris looked around. A lot changed. Not here. No. Workers guided a storage carriage through the receiving doors. A sealed container rested on top. It was small enough for 2 humans to lift. Tavra recognized the ownership symbol, but not the institution. New deposit. Yes. After Kestrel Reach nearly became a battlefield. Yes. Which civilization? Reth Assembly. What is inside? Restricted. Of course. The carriage passed through authentication. A human technician checked the container's environmental readings and attached a custody seal. Tavra watched. Do they know what happened here? Everyone does. and they sensed something anyway. Iris nodded. Tavra finally understood the answer in its simplest form. For generations, strategists had looked at human fleets, human borders, human budgets, human colonies, and human weapons. They had searched for the thing preventing the attack. They had been looking in the wrong direction. The answer was not aimed outward. It sat quietly behind sealed doors. 100 acts of trust, then 1,000, then so many that nobody could easily pull one thread without disturbing someone else's history. The humans had never announced it. Perhaps because, until Kestrel Reach, they had never considered it an announcement-worthy fact. They kept things. They returned things. They protected things that were not theirs. And somewhere along the way, the galaxy had noticed. The storage carriage rolled deeper into the repository. It passed containers marked with 23 different ownership sigils and disappeared between the long archive shelves. A human custodian checked the new seal one final time. Then the shelf door closed,